Hi guys, good evening and welcome to the JavaScript Simplified course. Today is the today happens to be class 11 of the JavaScript Simplified course. I really apologize for the slow pace. All right, really apologize for that. Um, it's actually due to my availability. But all right, in our last class, we looked at that's class 10. We looked at this keyword, and we also looked at enhanced object literal. Those were the two things we looked at in our last class. So, and today I already created a folder called class 11. So you have to create a folder with me. So you create a folder called class 11. That means that's if you have been following this structure, this folder structure. All right, so we have a JavaScript simplified course folder. So inside of it, we have all of these subfolders. So I created class 11. Then inside of class 11, I have index.html. And look at what we have here. Just a simple embedded styling and a simple markup here. In intermediate JavaScript section and array methods. All right, and that's what we have here. So in my JavaScript, look at what we have here. So I already have some ready-made code for you guys, all of this here. So I'm going to make this available for you guys on the group chat. All right, I'll make this available for you guys on the group chat. So let's move on. So today we want to look at array methods. Of course, we will not be able to finish everything that I plan to teach you today. So I plan to teach you for each map, filter, reduce, find index, includes, sum, every, sort, reverse, concat, join, flat, and what flat map. All right. So I'm going to be teaching you this, but of course I will not be able to teach you everything today. So we have to continue in our next class. So far, under array methods, we've looked at shift, we've looked at unshift, pop and push, slice, and splice. So these are the six methods we looked at previously. I think that should be in class 5 if I'm not mistaken. Okay, class 6. Let's check class 6. No. Let me check class 4. I guess I think I've treated that. Please hold on. Class 5. Uh-huh. Introduction to array. We looked at on shift, push, shift, pop, slice, splice, and yeah, that's all. So we are going to look at for each map, filter, reduce. So wherever we stop today, we'll continue the rest next time we'll be meeting. All right. So the first on my list is for each. The first on my list is for each. So what exactly is for each? So the for each method in JavaScript is used to iterate. It is used to iterate over each element in an array and execute a provided function once for every element. It does not return a new array but simply applies a function to each item. I'll repeat that. So the for each method in JavaScript is used to iterate over each element in an array. It is used to iterate over each element in an array and execute a provided function once for every element. So let's look at an example here. So I'm going to use nums. Let's say we have 10, 20, 30, and 40. All right. So we want to use for each to loop over what this array. And from its definition, it's actually used to iterate over an element, over an array. So it is used to iterate over each of the elements of the array, each of the elements of the array. So this is how for each works. So we just do nums. That's the variable that is holding this array. So we are going to attach for each on it. So this for each actually is um, a high order function. A high order function. So is this high order function is the one responsible for executing a callback function or a provided function once for every element. So we are going to have a callback function here. So it can be a regular function or an arrow function. So I'm going to use an arrow function. So I'll do an arrow function here. So you can either use the curly brace or not use the curly brace. All right, so that's depending on if you want to execute one line of code or if you want to have a lot of codes in the callback function. So I have this callback function here. So this callback function is the provided function that will be called or executed on every element. It will be executed on each element. All right, to be executed on each element. So this callback function that we have here will be executed on on each element of the array. All right. So and inside of the callback function, there are three arguments that we need to know. There are three arguments. So the first argument will be the element. The second argument will be the index of the element, while the third argument will be the array. So inside of the curly brace or inside of the callback function body, that's where we are going to what execute our code. So pass code to execute here. All right, very simple. So now console the log, if I console the log element, let's see what we are going to get here. I'm going to inspect. I'll come to the console. Now, can you see? We're getting 10, 20, 30, and what 40. So for each is used to iterate over each elements in an array and execute a provided function once for each element. So it does not return a new array. For each method does not return a new array. Rather, it simply applies a function to each item. So this is how for each works. All right. This is how it works. So you can see that. So we apply for each on this array, and the callback function will be executed on every number of will be executed on every elements of the array. All right now. So the for each is what we use to loop over the array, but the current element, the index of the current element, and the array itself can be found inside of the callback function. So when for each loops over this array, is going to execute this callback function on each of the elements. So let's say it loops and the first element it iterates on is 10. So the callback function will be executed on that value 10. So the element that we have as the argument of the callback function will represent 10. The index will represent the value, the index will represent is 0, while the array will be this entire array. So if it moves to 20, the element will be 20, the index will be 1, and the array will be this entire array. So I can console the log elements and also what index like this. And can you see it's giving me both the value of the array and the index of each values of each value. Can you see 10 the index is 0, 20 the index is 1, 30 the index is 2, and 40 the index is what 3. And it doesn't have to be like this, like element, index, and array. It doesn't you don't have to write it like elements, index, and array. It can be anything. All right, these are just names. So you get right, these are just names. So you can give it anything. You can give it current element, which starts for cur core, represent current element. You can even do index I, which represent index, and arr. And if you come here and you do c and this, you save. Look at what we get. We'll still get the same what result. All right. And if you also console the arr, that's the array, you will get what the entire array. How many times? 4 times. All right. So what if you don't want to have you are not interested in the index and you are not interested in the array? So you can just remove the index and the array like this, and you have what there's just this call. So whenever the callback function of the for each has just one argument, so that one argument will represent the element of the array. But if it has two, the first element will represent the first argument will represent the elements of the array, while the second argument will represent the index of the elements of the array. But in this case now we have one, just one argument. So so this argument will represent what the elements of the array. So if I console the log I and look at what we are getting 10, 20, 30, and what 40. All right, fantastic. Now, what about if I don't want to get the elements of the array? I only want to get the index. All right. If I don't want to get the elements of the array, I want to get the index. Instead of doing it like passing two arguments to the function, to the callback function like this, since I'm only interested in the index of the element, but I'm not interested in the element, what you can do is do something like this underscore. I think this is called that should be escape in function. It should be called escape in function. Yeah, I guess so. Um, maybe I'll go back. I'll get back to that. I'll make research on that and get back to you. But it's called escape. Like if you want to skip the current element. So because the first argument represent the elements of the array, but if you want to skip it, you want to avoid it, like you want to skip it, you just want to go straight to the index. You can just do something like this and pass I. So you only do something like this when you know you're only interested in the index. But if you want the elements of the array and also the index, then you have to do it the other way instead of doing it like this. So if you save now, we're only getting what the index of what of the array. All right, so that's that about for each. Of course, we can do a lot of things with it. You get, we can do a lot of things with it. I can do I times 2 and it's going to give me, you see that now, fantastic. You see, very interesting. So I can do I times 2 then plus I times 2 then plus 1 like this, and I'm still going to get, you see, look at, so you can do a lot of things with the with for each. You can do a lot of things with it. All right, you can do a lot of things with it. All right, so I think I've done justice to that already. So let's look at map. Let's look at map. Let's look at map. Please hold on. All right, let's look at map. Map. So map is similar to for each loop. Is similar to for each loop. So it's just that map method is used to create a new array, but for each is not used to create a new array. It just used to iterate over an array. It is used to loop over an array. It's just the normal. It's similar to the normal for off loop, for loop. All right. So for each loop is just used to loop over an array, but map is used to loop over an array and returns a new array. So it is used to create a new array by applying a provided function, that means the callback function, to each element of the original array. And also it does not modify the original array. So let's take for example, let's say we have okay, we are still going to use this norms array. So um so one thing you need to know that is different, one thing I need to know concerning map that is quite different from for each is that it returns a new array. It returns what? A new array. But every other process, every other thing, they are the same. So I'm going to do nums. Just watch. I'll do nums dot map. So this map will also receive a callback function, and the callback function is still going to follow the same process as for each. The first element will be the current element. I can call it num. The second argument, sorry, this first argument will be the element of the array. The second argument will be the index of the element of the array, and the third argument will be the what? The array itself. So you already know that. So I'll just do this, and in this case, you are going to return, since map is used to return a new array. All right, so you are going to either do an explicit return or an implicit return. I think I've taught you that before. So since I'm using an arrow function and I just want to return just a one line of code, I'm going to use what? Implicit return. So I'm just going to say num. You see that now, and I'm going to assign it to a variable. I will say transformed nums. Yes, transformed num. So if I console the log transform nums, let me comment this console. All right, if you come here, look at, we are getting back the same array. You see that now? We are getting back what? The same array. So when you use map to loop over or to iterate over an array, is map will return a new array back to you. All right, it's going to return a new array back to you. So you get that, right? So, but of course, we don't want to return the same array. So what's not the essence of using map? We don't want to return the same array. Rather, we want to return a transformed array. Like we want to return a new array with a transformed element. We want to return a new array with a transformed element. So let's say, for example, I want to return nums times nums. Okay, you get that now. So we have, so I hope you understand this. So this num is representing the element of the array. So we are saying the element of the array times the element of the array. So this map will be used to loop over this array, and the callback function will be called on each of the elements of the array. So this num represent the elements of the array. So when we say num times num, simply means 10 times 10, 20 times 20, 30 times 30, 40 times 40. And let's look at the result. Can you see? This is a new array with a transformed element. So when when you want to loop over an array and return a new array, the best method to use is map and not for each. All right. So I think that's that. That's that. And what again? Let me comment this. And I'm also okay. We have another one here. That's filter. I think I've done justice to that, to the map. I've done justice. So okay, we can use map to map over an object, you know, and so on and so forth. So let's quickly look at the difference between map and for each. Map returns a new array. For each does not return a new array. Map modifies original array. For each does not modify original what array. Then we can use map for transformation, but we cannot use for each for transformation, only side effect. All right. So let's move on. So let's look at filter. Let's look at filter. How does filter method works? How does the filter method works? Please let me turn off the fan so it won't affect the recording. Ah, so look at filter, we'll look at reduce, and we'll see how we can change both map, filter, and reduce together. And also we'll look at find, and let's see if we can stop at find or stop at find index. All right, so let's see. So for filter, filter is similar to for each and map, just that filter method is used to create a new array based on a given condition. It is used to create a new array based on a given condition, and it also does not modify the original array. So let's take for example, let me even show you an example of like an example without using map or filter. So let's say for example, I want to, you know, transform this array by multiplying each of the elements of the array by itself and returning it as a value. So imagine we don't know map and we want to do that. It's quite simple. We can do that using this. I'll just say, okay, first of all, I will have to initialize a new array. So I'll call it new nums and I'll give it an empty array. This is how it was it was done before map was introduced to JavaScript. So now I'm going to now loop over the nums. So I'll say nums dot. So you can either use for off loop or normal for loop. So I'm going to use um, for off loops. I'll say let num of what of nums. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to push. So I'll do new nums. That's the one we initialize outside. Dot push. So what do I want to push? I want to push this num here. So this num is representing the values or the elements of the array, the nums array. So I'm just going to say nums times nums. So I'm multiplying it by itself. So what I'm going to do is then I'm going to console.log new nums. So if you save that, look at what we are going to get. still the same result. But instead of going through all of this process, you can just do that all at a go with what? Map. You see that now? So map both loops over an array and also return a new array. So instead of initializing an empty array, then looping over the object that you want, looping over the array you want to transform. This is a lot of process. All right. So this is how it is being done before. So let me just keep that for your reference. Let me keep that. So let's look at filter. So I'm going to show you filter, and I'm going to show you the way it is being done before. So let's say we want to um I want to loop over this array and only return a new array of the elements that are greater than what? 20. That's a condition already. So filter method creates a new array containing only the elements that satisfy a particular condition or a given condition. So it does not modify the original what array. So it's still going to follow the same process as map for each. All right. So it's going to receive a callback function, and the arguments of the callback function is still the same process as that of map and reduce. So I'm just going to do nums. All right. Nums.filter. So filter also returns a new array. So I'm just going to do nums. So I'll do this. This is going to be an implicit return. So I'll say I want to only get nums that is greater than what? 20. So any number that is not greater than 20 will be filtered out. But any number that is greater than 20, which is 30 and 40, will be returned as a new array. So you see that now. Fantastic. So I'm just going to call this const filtered nums. You see that? So if I console.log filtered nums, let's see what we are going to get. Now look, we are getting what? 30 and 40. So this filter is performing both the function of the filter is looping over the array and also carrying out a conditional statement. All right. So we loop over it and it also carries out a all at a go. You get that now? So if we had to do it before, like the normal way or the former way of doing it before filter was introduced, it's going to be like, so we are going to initialize a new array. So I'm going to call it um I'll call it okay let me what should I call this now? I'm short of words. Mm, um or let me just call it nums2. I will initialize this. Probably if I have a better description for the variable, I will use it. But let's just let nums2 be an empty array. Then I'm going to loop over it. I'll say for let num of what? Nums. So what do I want to do? I'll say if num is greater than what? Than 20. What do I want to do? I want to then push num2. I want to push the numbers that are greater than 20 into what? Into the num2 array. Then if I console.log num2, let's see. We are getting the same result. So now let me ask you, which one do you prefer? Is it this filter method or just this one here? So you see that very simple. All right, very, 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 very simple. So we can use that to get even numbers. We can do a lot of things with this. We can do a lot of things with um, filter method. All right. So Okay, let's look at one more example. Let's look at one more example on filter. So let's say, for example, we have okay, let me just comment this part and also comment this other one here. So let's say we have another example here. I'm going to call it, okay, I'll do const users an object. So name will be Alice, age will be 25. I will duplicate this. This can be 30. So I'll use Bob and I'll also use Charlie. So now let's say I want to get only, I want to filter and only get the object that whose age is, I want to only get the user whose age is greater than 22 or greater than 18, or let's say 22, greater than 22. I only want to get the user returned as an array whose age is greater than what, 22. So how can I achieve that? It's very simple. I'll come here, I'll just say const add dot equals, then users does what, filter, user dot filter. So this filter, I'm going to pass a callback function to it. So this user there is representing the each of the object of the array. So the objects are the elements of the array. So the user is representing it. So I'll say I only want user dot age, because the user is the object of the array. User dot age that is greater than 22. All right. So if I console the log add dots now, for instance, and I save, look at what we are getting. We are getting two. We are getting an array of two objects. You see that? An array of what? Two objects. Fantastic. This is very, very simple. All right. So I think that's that. So last but not the least, I'm going to now look at reduce, reduce, reduce method. So reduce method is, a bit, is slightly different from all of the methods that we have looked at today. All right, I'm going to show you. Don't worry, I'm going to show you. So once we get to reduce, we can call it a day. All right. So reduce method reduces an array to a single value. It reduces an array to a single value by executing a function on each element. It accumulates a result as it iterates through the array. So I'm going to repeat that. The reduce method reduces an array to a single value by executing a function on each element. So that's all you need to know. Back to reduce method. So let's say, for example, we want to reduce this array. Where is it? This array with these four elements into a single value, meaning we want to add all the elements together. To add all the elements together, let me show you how it was before, like the way we usually do it before. Probably you can put it in the function or whatever, but let's put it in the function. So let's say function. I'll I'll call it um reduce. Let me just call this reduce, and I'll give this num, and let's say I'm going to call it with reduce. I'm going to call the reduce with nums array. All right. Then I'm going to initialize a sum variable which is equals to 0. and then I'm going to loop over it. So I'll say um okay, let me do nums here. So I will say for let num of nums. So here I will say sum plus or equals num. So here I'm just going to console. I'm going to console the log sum. So if you save and you check here, we are getting what 100. So that's the normal way. So this is the normal way we usually do it. But I'm just going to comment this. So this reduce here is actually a function. Oh. The one we have here is a function declaration. So we call the method with the actual argument. That's the array. Then this one that we have here in the initiation phase or initialization phase is the parameter that is representing the argument. So I'm just going to comment this part here, and let's look at how we can do this with reduce method. So I'll just say nums dot reduce. Then now this reduce will receive a callback function, but it's different from the callback function of map, filter, and what for each. Now, why is it different? Because the first argument of the callback function will not be the elements of the array. The first argument of the callback function for reduce method is accumulator. It is called accumulator. So it is called what? Accumulator. That's what it's called. It is called accumulator. So you can give it ACC. Then the second argument will now be the element. That's the current element of the array. That's LM. Then followed by the index. Then followed by the array. All right. So this is how it is. This is how the arguments of the callback function in a reduce method are. All right. So you can see the only difference is that for reduce, the argument for the callback function starts with what? Accumulator. And I'm going to show you the accumulator. So the meaning of the accumulator, just like the way we have let sum equals to 0. That's how the accumulator is. So it represents an accumulated result. So, but though we are going to initially set the accumulated result, we are going to initially set the accumulated argument value to a particular value. All right, to a particular value. Please hold on. So now, please hold on. All right, please. Sorry for the interruption. Sorry. Um. So let's say to add this now, just say ACC plus LM. So this is an implicit return. I hope you're aware. So now this ACC will have an initial value. All right, an initial value of is 0. So that will be after this. I'll just put comma is 0 here. So this is 0 is the initial value of the accumulator, the starting value of the accumulator, just like the initial value of this sum is 0. So the initial value of the accumulator will be what? 0. It doesn't necessarily have to be 0, but for us to be able to get the actual sum of the elements of the array, we have to give the initial value of the accumulator what is 0. And if you save and you come here and give it a total total nums, for instance, and you console the log total nums, then you will see what we have here. We have error, so it's not log 9. So if you save, look at what we have here, 100. You see that now, 100. So I don't need this array and element here. So I just need these two argument, accumulator, and the elements of the array. That's all I need. So you see that now, very simple. So this is zero stands for the initial value of the accumulator. But if you are doing explicit return, it's going to be like this. You're just going to return it manually like this. So instead of having the zero there, you're going to have it after the curly brace, comma, and then it's zero. So look at it. All right. And it's still giving us the same thing. But of course, since it's just one line of code we are returning from this function, I don't see any need of doing it like this. I will just remove this. We're good to go. So now let's see how we can chain map, filter, and what reduce together. Let's see how we can chain map, filter, and reduce together. So first of all, I'm going to get this movements array. I will copy and I will paste it here. I'll paste it here. So let me just call this const movements like this. So I want to get all the positive values. First of all, I multiply it by 2. I want to okay, I want to first of all get all the positive values. Then I will now multiply all the positive values by 2. Then I'll add all the values together, the multiplied values. So there are three things we are going to be looking at here. First of all, to get all the positive values, I'm going to use what filter. 2, to multiply all the positive values by 2, I will use what map. And to add all of them together, I'm going to use what reduce. So let's say we can do all of it together. So I'll call this const positive, okay, sum of positive values. So that will be movements dot filter. First of all, I want to get all the positive values. So I will say mov to represent each of the values of the array. So to get positive values, all I'll just do is any movement that is greater than what is 0 will be positive value. So this mov represent the values of the array. So any value that is greater than 0 represent what? Um, represent a positive value. So if you console.log this, you save. Let's look at what we have here. Can you see? We are getting what? A positive value. So what do we want to do next? Notice that is returning an array to us, an array of positive values. So instead of then attaching, so we can immediately attach match to it or chain map method to it. I'll just do dot map. So what do I want for map? I'll still do moves. So I want map. I want to add, I want to multiply each of the elements of the array by 2. So if you save now, you are going to see this. Now I can see it has been multiplied by 2. Then I also want to now add everything together. So I'll use reduce. So the first one will be ACC. It doesn't have to be ACC. It can be, I mean the name now. It can be sum. It can be anything. Okay, let's just use sum and mov. So here is going to be sum plus what mov, comma, then the initial value of the what accumulator, which is 0. Now look at what we have. A single value, 10,040. All right, very, very, very simple. You see that, right? Very, very simple. So I think that was all. So in our next class, we are going to look at find index of include, sum, every, and probably we might use 3 class to finish this. So once we are done with array methods, then we'll look at string method. Then after string method, we'll look at math and date method. Then from there, we'll look at the project. Then we also look at how to perform asynchronous operation in JavaScript. All right. Okay, so we are done. Please ensure you watch this video and you understand it. And if you have any questions regarding this topic, please let me know on the WhatsApp group. All right. So bye.